Danielle DeVries will be here with an overview of what we're expecting for this meeting, what we're hoping will happen, and some of the plans. First of all, my name is Eric Thompson. I'm a communications coordinator with the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen, and thank you again for joining us. We would like to acknowledge the homelands of the Indigenous peoples of this place we now call British Columbia and honor the many territorial keepers of the lands on which we work. And we are on the traditional unceded territory of these Syilx people in the Okanagan Nation. And we will, in just a moment, start with our housing panel and Anton Wolf. But before that, Danielle DeVries is here. She's an RDOS planner, and she will give us an outline of what we can expect in the meeting. Danielle.
Thank you very much, Eric. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know we have a lot of meetings coming up, so it's a big commitment. Tonight, we're very much focused on education. We have a lot of experts here in the room, so most of our time will be given to them to present, and then there will be a short question period after each panel. I did send around the agenda, so we have a housing panel tonight, the vacation rental panel, and then the economic development panel. I just ask that when you do ask questions to the panelists, you name which panelist the question is for, or if it's open to anyone on the panel, and then keep it as succinct as you can so we can try to get through as many people as we can. And I also ask that you try to keep it to a question rather than a backstory, just in the interest of time. Lastly, we have quite a few people on this call, and I don't want to wreck anyone's internet. So if you can keep your cameras and microphones off if you are not presenting or speaking. But when you're asking a question or presenting, please feel free to turn your cameras and microphones back on. And my final point is that we are recording this, so you will be able to come back and see this again in the future, and we'll be sharing it widely with the community for anybody who wants to be able to see it. And with that, I will hand it back over to Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And a quick reminder, when we get to the Q&A portion of each presentation, that will be at the end after all of the speakers have addressed the group for each presentation. So our first presentation is the housing panel, and once we have all of our presenters wrap up, so we have Anton Wolf, Tanya Osborne, Stephanie McLeish, and Adrian Federigo. At the end of those presentations, we'll then open it up to Q&A. We'll have approximately 10 minutes for Q&A, which is not a long time, but at that point, you'd be asked to then put your hand up, the virtual hand, if you could raise it on the side there. In the meantime, let's get to Anton Wolf. Anton is a building inspector with the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen. He's going to talk to us about an overview. He'll provide an overview of the building permit process, talk about health and safety, and wildfire as well. Anton, the floor is yours. We'll just remind you to unmute yourself if you could, Anton.
Oh, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Sorry.
And then just probably mute the boardroom.
Thanks for the intro, Eric. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, they asked me to come and just quickly speak about the building department here. I've been with the regional district for almost 14 years now, pretty much inspecting the same areas for that time. So basically, building inspection is a service that's provided by the RDOS. We are governed by the BC Building Code, and we have a building bylaw, which then governs how we actually enforce the BC Building Code out to the general public when people are constructing and doing work on their properties. Basically, once you commit to doing a job, there's a building permit process. That's the application, drawings. Basically, you come in, it goes through a process. Of course, it'll go through the planning department for zoning and permitted use. And then it'll come to the building department where we'll do code review, and then we'll issue the permit. And then the client is on their moving forward with their build. And then we have various inspections, about 12 or 13 spot inspections we do throughout the project, depending on what they're constructing. 13 is usually for a new build. It is very busy out there. Every year we've increased probably by 10 to 30% over the last 5 years. When it comes to health and safety concerns in the code, the biggest thing we're looking for is obviously the safety and the structure of buildings, the health and safety, people don't, guards, rails, smoke alarms, things like that. So it's a comprehensive list that we go through, and we deal with homeowners, contractors, residential builders. When it comes to wildfire, we don't do too much with the wildfire. Typically there's the volunteer fire departments will cover a certain area, and then once it extends past that area, then it goes to the province for BC wildfire to handle. What we do with fire is in the code, we have limiting distances to property lines and to buildings. So that's where we do our code review. And pretty much if you have large openings or anything like that, we don't want concentrated fire loads coming out of those and then potentially catching neighboring buildings. So it's very restrictive, and it's restrictive of where you build. So if you're in a fire protection area within a 10-minute fire response, then your glazed openings and limiting distance can be shortened to the property lines. If you're outside those, then we have to increase those because there's no fire response. Sort of doing a very quick overview here because I know we're short for time, but I think I'll wrap it up with that and let Tanya move on.
Anton, thank you very much. That was excellent. We appreciate you weighing in. We'll remind everyone who is participating in this meeting that Anton will be around and standing by if we have any questions for him at the end of our presentation. Tanya Osborne and Anita Ellie are with us now. Tanya is a community health facilitator. Anita is a specialist environmental health officer with Interior Health. Their presentation will run anywhere from 6 to 8 minutes, but they don't need to go all of that time if they can be concise. Of course, we have so many different speakers, but we want them to know that that's how much time they have. And with that, we'll go to Tanya and Anita. Go ahead, please.
And so health has many contributing factors, and the majority of which, about 60% of what makes us healthy, is actually influenced by our physical and social economic environments. This quote really speaks to me because it articulates the link between health and community planning, and that the types of policies that are put into your OCP will affect the lives of everyone within your community. You see, there's a ripple effect between planning and health. The types of policies that are put into your OCP will impact how your community is built. The built environment will impact the way people interact within and throughout the community. For example, is there easy access to key amenities like grocery stores? The way people interact with the built environment will then influence their behaviors. So do people walk to get their groceries, or do they always drive? And these behaviors will ultimately impact their health outcomes and the health of the community. So you may recall from the 2020 RDOS Housing Needs Assessment that Naramata has an aging population. With the projected decrease in household size, in sizes, that there will be more need for smaller size units in the future. In particular, a higher demand for one-bedroom homes, senior type housing such as retirement and assisted living, and accessible units. While the household median income is higher than that of BC, there's an increasing gap between renter and owner median incomes. And currently, there's only 10 affordable housing supports offered in the community, with a much greater number of households in need of that type of housing, and the need for affordable housing only continues to grow. Housing is a key determinant of health. Affordable, accessible, and appropriate housing for all is a powerful public health intervention that has been shown to positively impact the health of entire communities and improve overall health. Access to this type of housing decreases downstream costs from emergency service intervention. There's greater social integration, increased perception of public safety, and it can even increase physical activity levels. Therefore, the policies and interventions that address these factors and influence our built environment, address these factors and they influence our built environment and promote health and well-being. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, as I know someone else is going to be talking about affordability, but I do want to mention that in 2016, 18% of your community were unable to buy things like healthy, nutritious food or pay for their medications, have access to education and recreation opportunities, and possibly many other things because they were spending more than 30% of their income on housing. There's an urgent need for more affordable housing options within your community. The type of housing is also important to consider. A healthy balance of housing, including a diversity of forms, densities, and tenures, is a key component of a healthy and resilient local economy and can be an attractant to new investors as well as skilled workers. You may not realize it by looking around the community, but housing insecurity is affecting a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And that's why we need a variety of housing options to ensure that everyone has access to safe, secure, and appropriate places to live. The 2020 Housing Needs Assessment identified that there's an acute shortage of long-term rental availability in Naramata. And policies allowing secondary suites and carriage houses have likely helped, but there's still not enough rental stock available in the community to fill the need. So we need to ensure that the supply of housing available meets the needs of the community. So within your OCP, we recommend prioritizing a variety of housing forms and mixed income housing developments to increase access to local, affordable, and diverse housing options, which help people stay in the community longer and will improve their ability to afford other basic needs such as nutritious food while decreasing their stress. The quality of housing can also impact health in a variety of ways, as shown here, and it's important for housing to be free from environmental hazards, ensure a sense of safety, and have access to safe, reliable drinking water. Health evidence indicates that infectious illnesses are more easily spread when people are living in cramped or overcrowded quarters, so the size of housing is important to keep in mind. Also, how a home is designed can influence your health. For example, if you or a family member uses a wheelchair or other mobility device, your home needs to be designed in such a way that allows you to move in and out and around the home. And for most people, this becomes more apparent as they age and their mobility decreases. And the cost of retrofitting or modifying current housing is often extremely expensive. With an aging population, Naramata will need housing stock to accommodate this increase in accessibility needs. And moving forward, universal and adaptable design in new build, rentals, and homes can help to address this issue and allow for healthy aging in place. Health research has demonstrated that this can result in improved health outcomes at the population level. So beyond the influence of housing on health, it actually goes beyond the internal conditions and also includes the characteristics of where housing is located. The closer residents are to daily destinations, the more likely they are to utilize alternative forms of transportation, which not only support our environment, but have also shown to have a positive influence on health outcomes. Contributing to sprawl only helps to distance people from the amenities they need and increases the need for motorized vehicles. Therefore, we encourage directing density to the village center. This, with enhanced connection to efficient and safe transportation networks, including walking and cycling infrastructure, can improve health and well-being for the whole community. So looking to the future and climate change, it's important for the community to also avoid development within environmental hazard zones such as wildfire and flooding areas. So please remember that policies and interventions that address the social determinants of health include housing and neighborhood design, can promote physical and mental health and overall well-being. That's a whirlwind of my presentation, and Anita is here with me to answer any questions that pertains to any of this after the presentations. So
That was great. Thank you very much. So just to remind everyone, both of those presenters will be standing by along with Anton, and they'll be available for the Q&A portion. And I understand, Anita, you'll be presenting a little bit later on. Is that right? I think she will be.
Hi. No, I'm going to be part of the panel, and Tanya's going to continue. And next week, I'll be the full show. We're taking turns.
But you're good for now, though?
Thanks.
Are you not presenting right now? Nope.
No, I think we're going on to Stephanie.
Okay.
Are we, according to the agenda?
Yep, going to Stephanie next. Yeah. Okay, thank you both very much. Stephanie McLeish is the development manager with BC Housing Interior region, and she's going to talk about affordability. And Stephanie is with us now. Stephanie, go ahead, please.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie McLeish. I'm a development manager with the BC Housing Interior team. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, including Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. I'm here today to share some information regarding existing BC housing funding programs designed to assist in the development of affordable and supportive housing in your community. Sorry, it seems to be having a technical issue. Okay, here we go. To start, I'd like to talk about the Community Housing Fund, announced in 2018 as part of the province's 10-year, $7 billion housing plan. It's an investment of $1.2 billion to build more than 14,000 mixed income rental homes for middle and low income families and individuals. The focus of this housing is families and seniors capable of living independently without on-site support, as well as singles, couples, and people with disabilities in need of affordable housing. The program requires an affordable rental housing mix that includes 30% of affordable housing, 50% of rent geared to income, and 20% deep subsidy. Applicants who would be eligible for this program are non-profit housing providers, for-profit firms, or for-profit firms that partner with non-profit societies who are interested in developing and operating new affordable rental units. Currently, through the Community Housing Fund, since 2018, we have approximately 2,278 units in construction, 1,369 units in development, and 478 units completed. And that number is growing every day. We have received an overwhelming response to each CHF call. So it's quite competitive. And if you are interested in pursuing funding under this program, it's important to be prepared and have a strong application ready for submission when the call is announced. Some projects have taken longer than we originally anticipated, largely because of cost changes in the market, which everyone's experiencing, and COVID. And so the next call will likely be in the next 18 months to 2 years, as we're still working through many of the previously allocated projects. This sounds like quite a long time, but I would recommend that you should start identifying and developing projects now to be ready in time if it's something that you're interested in pursuing. The Supportive Housing Fund is an investment of $1.2 billion over 10 years to deliver 2,500 new homes with 24/7 support services for people who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. BC Housing works closely with our municipal partners in developing this type of housing. The main clients for this program are adults over 19 who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. It's largely designed to be affordable rental housing with on-site support services. Applicants who would be eligible for this funding are non-profit housing providers that are interested in providing property management and support services. Currently, there are 399 active SHF units. There's no formal call for this funding. It's available all year, and it's something that you would bring forward a proposition to the director of the region, who's John McEwen, or you're welcome to reach out to me. This funding comes with 100% capital and operating funding commitment. And it's critical in trying to solve the homelessness crisis every community is facing today, which is even more critical given the many encampments across the province. It's moving a bit slowly today, the presentation. Okay. The Indigenous Housing Fund is a $550 million investment over the next 10 years to build and operate 1,750 new social housing units for Indigenous families and seniors. The intended client for this is Indigenous families, seniors, individuals, and persons with disabilities. The program aims to provide more affordable rental housing, and the next call for applicants is likely to be in the next 18 months to 2 years as well. This has also been a really popular program, and we have seen a lot of applications coming in. Applicants who would be eligible for this funding are Indigenous nonprofit providers, First Nations, Métis Nations BC, nonprofits, and developers who want to partner with Indigenous organizations and First Nations. The province is investing $734 million over the next 10 years as the Women's Transition Housing Fund to build and operate 1,500 units to support women and children at risk of violence. The main clients for this program are women and their children who are at risk of violence or have experienced violence. There are 4 typical models: safe home, transition house, second stage housing, and permanent housing. Applicants who would be eligible for this funding are nonprofit service providers who are interested in developing and operating new rental housing. Since the EOI in 2018, we have created housing in a number of communities across the province. The program comes with 100% capital and operating funding commitment. The development team partners strongly with dedicated staff in operations to support positive outcomes on an ongoing basis. We've experienced very good support from municipalities and communities for this program to date. There is no formal call for this. So please just, again, it's same as supportive housing, just reach out to us and we can start looking at a project. So here's a snapshot of where we are currently at and the associated targets for each program. We are in year 4 of these programs. And as you can see, we are progressing towards targets in each program very quickly. We currently have 30% of the unit target for CHF programs, over 50% of the IHF program target in development, and 30% of the Women's Transition Housing Fund program in development. Due to the overwhelming need for supportive housing, we are currently on track to exceed this target. However, this includes both permanent and temporary supportive housing. The goal would be to build 2,500 permanent supportive housing units. If we continue at this pace, we're on track to easily meet those targets. So in closing, thank you for the opportunity to present, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have in the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. That's Stephanie McLeish. She's the development manager with BC Housing. And coming up in just a moment, we'll hear from Adrian Federigo. Adrian is with the Area E OCP Community Advisory Group. She'll be talking about aging in place and tiny houses. And just a reminder, after Adrian's presentation, we will open it up to Q&A for about 10 minutes before we get to our next segment, which will be vacation rentals. So, Adrian Federigo, go ahead, please, here in the boardroom.
Can I see myself when it does that, or is it just my presentation?
I'll see you.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Adrian. I am, for those who don't know me, I am a Naramata resident. So I'll be talking about affordable housing and aging in place. So our approach, yeah, we can switch to the next one. I found this fun meme because I feel that many of us trying to get into the housing market are feeling the pinch on where our current housing prices are and just trying to be able to come and live in Naramata. So just kind of a little meme there. So I talk mostly, for those who know me, I'm a passionate in alternative types of housing. Not everyone wants to live in an apartment building, and not everyone wants an apartment building in their communities. So there are sort of alternate structures that can be created to live in that provide a healthy and safe environment. And with the amount of land that we have available in Naramata, you can come up with some smaller alternatives that would fit nicely in place with our current landscapes. So alternatives are our accessory dwellings, which are generally smaller and can be oftentimes are just either a building on their own or over a garage. We have tiny homes, which are gaining a bit more popularity. Television and those are kind of highlighting how they can be an affordable option. And we have secondary suites, which is then traditionally within the home. And then I threw out yurts because they're kind of fun and cool and they can provide quite a bit of housing space as well. Next. So looking at not only different types of housing, but there's also different ways that we can capitalize on the working together and living together to create those affordable options on where we can put some of these alternative types of housing. So there's co-housing, which can operate like a strata condominium type deal. So you're within a community, but everyone owns their own home. But within a co-housing community, the intention is to have a communal space, like maybe there's an extra house or like a little clubhouse, just somewhere that residents and those within the community can meet and hang out and do things together. Also within co-housing, it's, sharing tools, maybe it's sharing meals, it's just really living close and together, but having your own space as well. Cooperatives operate sort of in the same way, but within a cooperative, you have a membership share to get into it. So it's more of a nonprofit. So there isn't one particular owner of the property. It's amongst everyone. So your shares would be the same. And then looking at a housing cooperative, say you would have your monthly expenses that would be there to cover the cost of maintenance or insurance, sort of things like that. Cooperatives also can be in different fashions, but in housing, traditionally in an apartment building, you wouldn't own your complex or your own your own apartment in your own space, but it would be there available for you to use. I've been chatting with a few others about looking at maybe a tiny house cooperative, where in that case you would own your own home and then you would just cooperatively be purchasing land to make it more affordable for those who can't get into the housing market right now. There's also looking at some home sharing. And so many, we have some fairly large houses in Naramata that a majority of the space is empty. And so there may be an opportunity to share your home with someone else just to kind of help keep some of those costs affordable and just keep your, you're healthy and being able to spend it on some other items. Land leasing, I'm not sure how prevalent it is in BC, but it's something that Ontario's looking at. And essentially that would be having, if someone in a tiny house or a yurt wanted to come onto your land, then you would be able to put together a formal land lease agreement in there. And then they would help essentially contribute to like mortgage payments and other things. Next. So this is an example of a property currently in Naramata that has some alternative living arrangements on there. So it is something that can be done that's fairly non-invasive. It's nice looking and You can barely tell that the house is there. So this is a half-acre property that has the ability to host alternative dwellings without being too crazy. Next. This is another example of a home that's in Naramata as well that's got a tiny yurt there. Again, they don't have a very large property, but they've put up those shrubs to kind of hide a bit of what's going on. But it is, again, an alternate dwelling that could be on a property. Next. This one's an example of a accessory dwelling. So you have the garage on the bottom, kind of tucked in there behind the truck, and then upstairs is a 1-bedroom apartment. So some benefits. Next. There we go. So financially, having someone either within your home, an accessory dwelling secondary suite does give you some extra financials. So it will allow you then to age in place. You can stay longer if some of those expenses are up there and you just need some additional help. If you have somebody that's on your property, say, who is able and willing, you'll have some extra assistance with house chores and say on land. My thoughts that were there with that was that if you are on an acreage and it's just getting to be too much, then if you had some extra hands on the property, then they would be able to assist with anything that you needed. If a young family feels that an alternative dwelling is something that fits into their lifestyle and what they'd like to do, then it gives opportunities for young families to move into the community. Secondary suites or accessory dwellings will give them the opportunity. It's not something that's big. It's not necessarily something that they will own, but it will give them something that is affordable. If they're looking at like a tiny house or a yurt, they may be something that's within more of an affordable range. And then it gives them their own sense of home. And then if it doesn't work out, they can, at least with a tiny house, you just roll away. So then there's the mental health effects in there as well. So if you are an older individual and you're in the home all alone, now you won't be. Now you have some other people that are around, either within the house or on your property. And then you have that companionship. Safety kind of in a few different ways, but in terms of having others that are close by, you can feel safe knowing that there's others that are around you, especially again, if you live alone. And then just, the safety in numbers. And then if wildfire, flood, anything where you need to evacuate, you'd have somebody else there that would be able to assist you. And then assistance in a medical emergency. It's always nice to have others that are there that may be able to assist. Next. So I'm not sure if many of you know, but Naramata is actually designated as an age-friendly community. And so within that, there's different policy, services, and structures that sort of help to create that physical and social environment. So the Government of Canada and the BC government have outlined some different areas that gives a guideline on how we can continue to ensure that aging in place is smooth and that there's activities and things that are in place to help you, feel comfortable and continue to be a part of the community. Next. So how can this work in Naramata? So with this, again, it's utilizing the abundance of land that we have, not in an invasive way and not saying, putting up houses everywhere, but like in my first example, there's opportunities to be able to tuck something kind of away in a small corner of your property that you may or may not see. Or utilizing, if you've got a larger home, then putting in that secondary suite will allow you to utilize that extra home space that's there. That hit number 2. So one idea with creating the secondary suites is it's not always financially viable. So what we could look at doing is creating a cooperative of homeowners who have the housing. You would put in an initial fund, and then that money that would be available would be around for those to create that secondary suite. And they would also allow you to hire a team of people to help facilitate the management of tenants and some of those other responsibilities that are not always favorable when you have tenants. Not everyone is a wonderful tenant. It's totally appreciated that you're going to have random people in your house. So, and through the cooperative, you could hire somebody who would take on all of that management, would help find the right tenant to be in your space with you and around them, would deal with all of that. And then some other opportunities there could be is creating more pocket communities, such as the Naramata Senior Housing Society. There's such wonderful units, and it would be amazing to have more of those. So how can we continue to work with their society to find some more land to expand those? Or like the townhouses on Ellis. They're a great little pocket community there. And so with, again, some of the abundance of land that you have, if you're sitting on acres and you're not really sure what to do, there's always that subdivision possibility, and then looking at how we can fund that and how we can capitalize on that with alternatives. Next. Oh, there we go. I'm done. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. That's Adrian Federigo. She is Area E OCP CAG member, Community Advisory Group member. We have until approximately 20 after 7 for our Q&A now, so we'll ask you to raise your hand, your virtual hand if you could. If you'd like to ask a question, you're welcome to turn your camera on while you ask your question, but you don't need to, because we will be able to hear you. We have Shannon here assisting from the planning department. She is operating the buttons, so she'll look for those hands as they go up. And again, our presenters are standing by to answer any of your questions. We have Anton Wolf, Tanya Osborne, Stephanie McLeish, and also Anita Ellie is here, and of course, Adrian. So we'll get things started if we have any questions. And if we don't have any questions, we can certainly move on to our next segment, because we have Danielle DeVries standing by from the planning department, and she's going to get things started in just a few moments talking about vacation rentals. That'll be an interesting panel, because I know it's a topic of discussion for a lot of people in Naramata. And just a reminder, these deep dive meetings are scheduled for both education and policy development purposes, and the meetings will discuss a series of what we're calling hot topics, and they've been identified by the Community Advisory Group and through surveys with subject matter experts to learn more about the opportunities and constraints of the process. It doesn't look like we have any hands up, and while we're waiting, just in case we do have anyone who wants to ask a question, I'm going to quickly ask Danielle. You have a meeting coming up, I believe, on Tuesday, is that right?
That's right.
What can you tell us about that meeting?
Yes. So Tuesday is a public information meeting, which will be open to the public in addition to everyone here who's on the Community Advisory Group. That meeting is specifically to go over the results of Survey 2 and prepare for the Survey 3, making sure everyone understands the content. I do see we have some hands, so I'll hand it back to you. Warren had his up first.
Warren?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Warren. Go ahead, please. I'll just ask you to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Just a quick question on the building development side. Is there any way of fast tracking things like yurts that are very simple? They're like, I don't know if they have to go through the same process. Is that how it works currently, or is there a different process for something like that?
Good question. Let's ask Anton Wolf if he can join us on that one. Anton, are you there? And can you provide some insight to Warren's question about possibly fast tracking some of these alternative housing solutions like yurts?
Yeah, that's an ongoing discussion with us on how we can better provide service in getting the building permit applications out. It all starts with the process. So when you submit your application, it has to go through the planning department first, and big constraint on all this is usually staff. And in the last 5 years, every year it's an increase. So our workload has increased year to year. So it depends on the time of year when you process. Typically, once it gets through planning and it gets to the building inspectors, the smaller projects tend to sort of jump the queue in a sense, because a house or something might take a day or so to review, where a smaller garage, if you have a few hours in the day, we tend to try to get those out a little quicker But it's all queue related, it's staff related, and technically we're down a building official right now and we're in the hiring process. So once we get our 5th official back, timelines will increase. So it's an ongoing process that we're trying to get through, but yes, it's on our radar.
Okay.
That
Great.
answers your question.
Okay,
Yeah, that
thanks,
answers
Warren.
that. Thank you.
And thank you, Anton. Appreciate that. I'm just
Yes,
going to look at the list here, and I see, I'm just going to start right at the top there, I think. And it looks like Skulk is with us. If you want to go ahead, please.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, I've submitted quite a number of questions to Danielle, and it's going to take a lot more than 10 minutes to just read through the questions, never mind coming to the answers. I wouldn't like to read them, but this is meant to be a deep dive, and we're supposed to actually look at all the OCP clauses, and related to that, the questions that I have, are quite in depth. So can I just ask Danielle what the proposed reaction to all my questions are?
If you have anything that you'd like to address to one of these experts right now, you can go ahead and ask them. I am also compiling things that don't get asked tonight, and we'll be putting it up with written answers afterwards.
So if I can just jump in there, Skulk, I think I've seen the questions here that you've asked, and I think what would be appropriate then would be to provide those answers, and they would be posted on RDOS Regional Connections so that the group can see them as well. But as Danielle said, did you want to direct maybe one of your questions to one of our experts if it pertains specifically to the presenters?
Thanks, Eric. I guess none of my questions actually fit into any one of the presenters' domains of expertise. So no, we're talking about housing and development and growth. They all go together. Some of the presentations tonight, I would suggest, is rather not meant for Naramata in any event. And there are a lot of reasons for it, not only for what we are, but for what we have. So no, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks for joining the meeting tonight. Let's go to Stephanie next up on our list in order of where I can see them. Stephanie, go ahead with your question, please, and just a reminder to unmute yourself before you ask your question, please.
Thanks very much. And thanks, Skulk, because I think that was one of my points, is that, I think this topic requires a lot more discussion that we have the luxury of tonight. So maybe, Danielle, you and I can talk about how we might address this a little bit more thoroughly. Because I think the group, as you're hearing from Skulk, and I know others have approached me, are looking for, in-depth discussion on this. But one of the questions I have, and I represent the Naramata Society for Responsible Infrastructure, is, I guess, directed towards Anton. And I'm wondering, we've seen developments going up in the region, and we appreciate and acknowledge that there is a housing shortage and that housing is becoming unaffordable. Unfortunately, what we're seeing being developed isn't affordable housing, it's housing. And we're also seeing that the housing is being done with and I'll just speak from my personal view on this, little regard for the environment and water runoff and the challenges that we've already addressed through our group. So I'm wondering what the OCP, what weight or clout can the OCP bring to the table on this, so that we are, addressing the housing needs, but we're also developing housing and perhaps, approving of developments that are taking into consideration the environmental impact, the infrastructure impact that we are facing in some of these developments that we're seeing going on right now in Naramata.
Stephanie, thanks for the question. I think Danielle might be best suited to start with that one. Again, it's challenging because we don't have a lot of time, but there will be opportunities to have these longer in-depth conversations still in the process. Is that right?
That's right. This is the first point where we have all of these experts with us. So just respecting their time, we're keeping it short, but us as the community advisory group will have further discussions on these. And then to answer your question, it is a tricky one, what weight the OCP can have in terms of development. It can guide what kinds of development we do and do not want. Any rezoning or subdivision type of applications would be measured against the policies in the OCP, as well as what is in the zoning that would trickle down from the OCP. But there's not necessarily a lot of strong controls to define what type of house somebody can put on a lot, thinking of the ones that have gone in that are now multi-million-dollar houses up on the hill, that they have the right to build whatever they want on that lot if they own the lot. That's the short answer. We can talk more about that offline.
Very quickly, that's a really important point. Where does the process start to make sure that what is being approved and what is going into OCPs is the type of development that the community thinks is reasonable when it comes to the environment and water and other important issues like that?
That all comes in the OCP. So regional growth strategy says where the growth in Naramata goes, and then the OCP says for each type of land we have in Naramata, what can go on those pieces of land.
So the OCP is key to that.
Antoine, can I just ask a quick follow-up on that?
You know what? Yeah, go ahead. We're just about out of time.
Just on the province overriding, which we've been hearing about on the radio, right? I know that that's not something they hope to do or want to do, but what are the chances of that happening in Naramata?
I think we have yet to have that play out and see what happens. It's news and new.
Yeah.
But I think, thank you, Stephanie, for that question. And I think it highlights the importance of then having an OCP that outlines exactly what the community would like to see happen. And I see Director Kazakovich, there's a comment from her in there, and she is saying that, would you be able to bring that up for us, Shannon? I'm just going to share Director Kazakovich's comment, and then I think we will have to move on because we're out of time for our Q&A. I do apologize to those who haven't had a chance to ask questions yet, but a reminder that through RDOS Regional Connections on this project tab, you will be able to add in questions and have answers and let the group see them. And going back to Director Kazakovich's comment, she said we need a growth boundary in the new OCP. And, oh, is that the whole comment?
Nope.
Oh, there. We need a growth boundary in the new OCP. We currently don't have one. And that was a comment in the chat from Director Kazakovich, Carla Kazakovich, Area E Director. Okay, with that, we should stay on time because we have a lot to get to and more presenters. And in just a moment, we will hear from Rosa Aylwin. She is a bylaw enforcement coordinator, and she's going to talk a bit about enforcement and noise as it pertains to our next topic, which is vacation rentals. We also have Tanya Osborne presenting. She is a community health facilitator, and Anita Ellie is back as well. And she's a specialist environmental health officer with Interior Health. But first of all, Danielle DeVries, planner with the RDOS, to talk about the current process and policy. And she's going to take the lead chair here that has all of the controls for her presentation. Here's Danielle.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here and then we can make a start. It's a very big week for vacation rentals in Naramata. I know there's a new opinion piece up on My Naramata. There we go. Should be seeing it correctly now. So my goal in this presentation tonight is to help everyone understand what is currently happening with vacation rentals. It by no means is the right way to address vacation rentals. However, it is the policies that we do have in place and that we're working within right now to be able to address them. So a couple text-heavy slides. I'm not going to labor these points. I know you all have this from sending it around, but I wanted to reiterate that in our current OCP, we do have criteria for the vacation rentals in two ways. First, these criteria that say we will support it as long as Oh, you can see the speaker view. Darn, that's okay. I don't really have notes anyways. Share, there we go. Hopefully that's better, otherwise we'll just roll with it. We must check domestic water and sewage disposal, have screening and fencing to protect people, provide off-street parking, make sure it complies with the BC building code, and then any benefits it would provide to the community, which mostly at this point is taken as accommodation and economic development. This goes on further with several more criteria and requirements that when we issue a TUP, they are conditions of the TUP, and the holder of the permit must do these things, including making sure that they give information to anybody staying on their property. And then we limit them to a maximum of 10 people at 2 people per bedroom. So a maximum of 5 bedrooms, depending on the size of the property and the dwelling that they're trying to rent out. They must provide 1 parking space for each bedroom. Nobody can camp on site, and they have to pass a health and safety test. So the way this works in practice is that anybody who's looking to do a vacation rental on their property must apply for the temporary use permit. The application fee did increase to $2,500 at the beginning of this year, so it may be a barrier to some, or would perhaps encourage people to make sure that they're doing it correctly before they apply. That's debatable. But it isn't necessarily easy for somebody to get a TUP. I know that's one of the thoughts going out and about right now. But to do this application, somebody has to provide a written rationale as to why they want it, which 6-month time frame they would be renting it out on short-term rental. They have to provide floor plans of the space that would be used for the rental, a parking plan and site plan on site. They have to prove their septic capacity is sufficient, which in a lot of times in Naramata it's not. And they have to post a development sign up on their property and pass a health and safety inspection. So there's quite a lot of steps, and we do find that people withdraw their applications or choose not to apply after inquiring about it. And the current approach, which I know quite a few people are discussing right now, is that most vacation rentals are approved for a test year to see if there's any concerns about that, and then at renewal, they're assessed a little bit further to see if there was complaints, if there were any problems, etc. And neighbors are also given opportunity to submit comments and attend the public information meeting. Here's the exciting part of the presentation. I just wanted to give an overview of where we're at with vacation rentals in the regional district. So this is the entire regional district, not just Area E. The number of vacation rentals applications are definitely going up each year. This policy came into place in 2014, but there were 0 applications that year. 2015, I think there was a big hype for the first season. 2016 were all renewals from the first year, and then applications took quite a dip after that. Until last year, we saw 22 applications, and this year we've already received 5 in the first quarter, which puts us on track to receive about 20 again this year. Most of these applications we're receiving, so since 2014, we've received 77 applications. 2/3 of those are happening in electoral area E. So really this is a focus in Naramata as opposed to the rest of the RDOS. And just some more fun stats for you, because I like stats. Of the 77 TUP applications that we've received, 2/3 of those were first-time applications, and only 1/3 were renewals. So there are more houses coming onto the market for the short-term vacation rental. Then of those 51 first-time applications in the middle there, about 2/3 of those were approved. 1/3 is still pending. So those are applications that have not yet been to the board and we're dealing with internally. Only 1 has ever been denied, and 7 withdrew, which are ones where they may have been denied, so they chose not to move forward, or they didn't have all the appropriate pieces that we require in the OCP. And finally, of the 33 applications that have been approved thus far, 9 of them have lapsed and not reapplied. They've chosen to either not do it anymore, or they didn't think they were going to get approved again. 14 have been renewed and are still active, and 10 are still active on their very first term. So they haven't come up for a renewal yet, leaving us with 24 that are active. I don't think you'll be able to see this super well. It's too big of a map, but I just wanted to give you an idea of that these are actually very spread out. Some in the village, but also in the agricultural land along Naramata Road, and a couple coming up in the subdivisions on the hillsides. And my last couple of points here is just to say that this is not an easy topic. I know we have a lot of opinions in the community and also in this room, and they're quite polarized, from completely placing a moratorium on vacation rentals and stopping all vacation rentals that are out there, to the complete opposite side of the spectrum and saying, let property owners decide what they want to do on their property and remove all red tape. I think where we land on this is probably somewhere in the middle. But there's huge variation there as well, from the more summerland approach of having somebody who's living permanently on the property and managing it, to reducing the requirements we have and having a little bit more flexibility. And these are some of the common solutions I hear, and just again, making that point that it's not necessarily as easy as it seems. If we were to ban all vacation rentals, it's a possibility, but we're going to have unhappy property owners and unhappy tourists. There will be empty vacation homes that are owned by out-of-towners and are only used for part of the year, and they were supplementing their visits with other people's vacations. It may introduce some more long-term rentals to the market, but it also may not. Some people are wary of what's allowed through the Residential Tenancy Act. Likewise, requiring an owner on the property might help solve some of the problems with noise and other complaints, but that would only allow suites and accessory dwellings then to be rented on short term, where vacation rentals or vacation homes would remain empty because those owners don't live in town. And finally, removing all the red tape would lead to a lot of unhappy neighbors who don't want them into the community, and perhaps even fewer long-term rentals on the market. My last 2 points here, that Airbnbs and Bnbs, bread and breakfasts, are not the same thing. They are seen differently in the zoning bylaw, but do have some similarities. In vacation rental requires a property manager to be on file and distributed to the neighbors, where bed and breakfast is what we currently require to have an owner operator on site. Otherwise, they're quite comparable. And this all leads to the point that we need a vacation rental review regionally. So in our OCP process, what we can do is create community-specific policies for Electoral Area E, which may say we want vacation rentals in one neighborhood but not in the other, or perhaps a limit on size and spaces that are specific to the Naramata community. But changing the vacation rental policies has to be a region-wide review, because it doesn't just affect Area E. That is it for my presentation. I will hand it back over so we can stay on schedule. I went a little long, and I will pass it back to Eric.
And Danielle, before we hand it to our next presenter, a couple of quick points that have come up here is, can you clarify that last year there was a larger increase in the number of applications, and that had to do with an individual who submitted a list of properties that they thought were operating illegally. And I believe that led to some written warnings going to those people, advising them they should apply for permits. Was it applicable to them?
Yes, so there are, I think, 3 or 4 in Naramata that those applications came through because of bylaw enforcement.
And then can you quickly talk about how permits came to be? I understand there was a lawsuit involving the RDOS. Do you know much about that? And it was a Naramata property more than 10 years ago that had an illegal vacation rental, and the RDOS had to go to court.
Yes, I think Rosa may touch on that in her her presentation, so I'll leave that question to the end.
Okay, thank you. And a reminder, we will have time for Q&A at the end. We have the chat that's going on as well, and people can make comments in there while we're speaking, but you can specifically ask your question if you'd like at the end. And I did see a comment in there from Ava, and I think it's an important one to mention as well. And people are looking for some kind of covenants that might be restrictive enough to protect the environment while all of this is going on, whether it's a short-term rental or any other type of development in the area. Let's go to Tanya Osborne now and Anita Ellie. I'm not sure which one will be presenting, but Tanya is a community health facilitator, and Anita Ellie is a specialist environmental health officer with Interior Health, and they're going to talk a bit more on this topic. I'll hand it over to them.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out my controls there. So yes, Tanya Osborne again, and just to let you know, Anita Eli is with me to answer questions. She is our environmental health officer, and I'm sorry that I neglected to say that originally. So moving on to vacation rentals and short-term rentals, I will use these terms interchangeably, so just bear with me on that. And is this working? Yeah. Okay, so this is another version of the image that I showed you earlier, just as a reminder that health is influenced by a wide variety of factors, and housing being a key component. The health impact of vacation rentals, however, is not as straightforward as the discussion we had earlier about the importance of housing on health outcomes. So I'd like to start by just understanding what health equity is. People often confuse equality with equity. Equality means that everyone gets the same resource, but this approach fails to acknowledge how unequal the results are for different groups. Giving everyone the same bike doesn't mean that everyone will be able to ride. Health equity means that all people are able to reach their full health potential and are not disadvantaged by social, economic, and environmental conditions. So we know that health differences are not random, but are patterned across populations. And people who have fewer resources are less healthy than those with more money or social status. Human inequities are not inevitable, and they are preventable, and they are unjust. When planning a community, we have to be extra careful, as planning can further the divide between different groups, contributing to inequity. To counter this, we need to deliberately put more energy, resources, and considerations into our processes, policies, and plans to meet the needs of people in our community for whom the status quo isn't working. So when making decisions about short-term rentals and other policies within the OCP, ask yourself these questions. Who will benefit? Who will or may be excluded? What contributes to this exclusion? And what can you do to counter the exclusion? These simple questions can help you understand the impact of a policy on equity. So moving on to short-term rentals, from a health perspective, our concern really is around both suites and secondary homes, as they could both potentially be long-term housing options. However, the biggest culprit to the potential housing stock loss is when secondary homes are purchased as investment opportunities and turned into short-term rentals. This diminishes the overall housing stock available for locals. Turning secondary suites and accessory homes into short-term rentals also takes away from long-term rental availability within the community. As per the 2020 Housing Needs Assessment, we know that there is already an acute shortage of long-term rentals available in the community. So looking at it from the perspective of a homeowner, knowing that income is also a key determinant of health, vacation rentals can contribute to property owners' income. For some, this is a surplus. For others, it's a necessity in order to be able to afford their mortgage. Short-term rentals have been found to be more profitable than long-term rentals, and therefore may be a necessity for some property owners. Since short-term rentals are more lucrative, the purchase price of homes with built-in suites or the potential for them have been driven up, making it even harder for first-time buyers to enter the market. So looking at short-term rentals from a renter's perspective, having low numbers of long-term housing stock drives up the cost for those living in long-term rental units. With higher housing costs, there's less disposable income to spend on things like quality food and medications, which will negatively impact health. Lower numbers of long-term rental stock can also lead to overcrowding. Say if 2 or 3 people try to share a 1-bedroom unit, for instance, to save on rental costs, this can lead to easier transmission of communicable diseases. And from a community perspective, another thing to consider is the movement of long-term to short-term rentals also means that neighbors no longer know who else is in their neighborhood. There are continually new faces arriving. Social connections between neighbors no longer exist, and these new faces may not be as invested in the community in the same way as long-term renters would be, which may lead to disturbances such as increased noise, which can also negatively impact health. And while vacation rentals can support tourism and the local economy through accommodation for the traveling public, many businesses have been finding it difficult to attract employees due to the lack of housing stock available, especially in long-term rentals. As you can see, there's benefits and drawbacks to everything. It's important to balance long-term housing needs with support for visitors and the economic opportunity. We recognize that every community needs to find their balance when it comes to short-term vacation rentals, and we encourage regulation to support the balance identified within the community. One last thing to note about parcels serviced by private water and sewage systems. A short-term rental will house different numbers of people throughout the month or year, which generates different quantities of wastewater. Sewage systems perform best with a steady, constant supply of wastewater because it's food for the microbes doing the actual treatment. Also, if more wastewater goes into the system than designed, because there's more people in the house than originally planned, then there's a good chance that the receiving soil will not be able to absorb the wastewater fast enough. And these things can cause the sewage systems to fail prematurely. All sewage systems will fail at some point. Therefore, it's always important to have extra suitable land available for future sewage needs. And short-term rentals on small lots serviced by on-site sewage is really a recipe for trouble. I've identified a few resources here that I highly recommend the advisory group look at before making any decisions on short-term rentals. And I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity to present. Anita is here to answer any questions specific to health and the environment, and I'm here for others. And if Daniel wants to collect all of the questions that weren't able to be addressed, we're happy to provide answers, written responses to all of them. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We appreciate your presentation and thank you for coming back for a second segment. Let's go to Rosa Alwyn. I believe Rosa is going to join us from her desk. There she is. Rosa is a bylaw enforcement coordinator with the RDOS, and she is going to do a quick presentation for us now, and then we'll get to our Q&A. Rosa, go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosa Alwyn. As Eric said, I'm the bylaw enforcement coordinator for the regional district, and I've been asked to speak to you about enforcement of a vacation rental and the enforcement of the noise bylaw. So our enforcement process, according to the policy, starts with a written policy. So I would like to show you by sharing my screen as to how to lodge the complaint. There we go. So the way to get to the complaint, the bylaw enforcement page, the easiest way to get to it is go up to I want to on the main bar and go down to submit a property complaint. That's going to take you to the bylaw enforcement page and the bylaw complaint form. So when you click on that, it will open up the form. It is not user friendly, so you will have to print it off or send me an email with all of this information in it. It's particularly important that you have your name, your address, and everything. This information isn't shared with the people or with the property owners, with the vacation operators. It's kept confidential. So, and we do need the detailed description and how it affects you. That's quite important. We need to know what to look for and what to focus on.
Hi, Rosa. Can I just interrupt real quick? Sorry about that.
Yes.
We're not able to see your screen, so what we're going to do in the short term, there's Danielle coming to tell you this. We're going to,
Okay.
if she's not able to share your screen,
I'm talking away.
We'll bring it up in here. But it looks like Danielle's there to fix it. Sorry about the.
I missed a button.
There we go. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. My first time, so. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I do apologize for that. So from the home page, all you need to do is go up to the blue bar to I want to and submit a property complaint. So when you click on that, it's going to take you to the bylaw enforcement page. This is the bylaw enforcement procedures policy that will explain the process and the steps that we take when we enforce. The complaint form can be accessed from here. So you just fill it in. Like I said earlier, if it's not user friendly, so if you want to send me an email with all of the information that is on here, I will gladly accept that. So then we, what we do is we would notify the vacation rental operators that we've received a complaint. We would give them time to submit an application or to close their operation down. It does take time simply because vacation rentals, they do book in advance. There are people that have committed their money and their time, have booked vacations and things like that. And that may seem unimportant, but when it comes to enforcement, we do have to take that into consideration. We do need to be fair to not only the neighbors, but to the operator themselves and give them that opportunity to make things right. Any noise complaints coming from the vacation rental operation, or in fact from anything, noise complaints can be called directly into the bylaw enforcement officer, and the phone number to reach them at is, if you guys want to take this down, is 250-492-0911, and it's right here on our bylaw enforcement page. They will go out, it's 24/7, so if you call them late at night, they will go out and speak with the operators trying to shut them down. There is a misconception out there that the times in the noise bylaw apply to vacation rentals and that they can't call until after the 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock time. It's actually 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday, Sundays and holidays. It's after 4 p.m. So anyway, when these people are, you find that you feel that they're being too noisy, even if it's in the middle of the afternoon, please do call the bylaw enforcement officer. He will go out, he will assess the noise. And yeah, if they have loud music blaring and it can be heard 4 or 5 houses, you know, around the neighborhood, then of course it's going to be a contravention, and they will more than likely be fined. There was a question that was asked earlier, and I'd like to address that question before the other questions come in. The question was, they know that they can phone the line for excessive ongoing noise if it's a vacation rental with a TUP registered. The complaints will go toward renewal consideration. What about if they don't have a permit? Well, that's what enforcement is. When we receive a complaint, we investigate whether or not they do have a permit. And if they have a permit, we look at the conditions as to what conditions that permit was issued under. And if they're breaking some of those conditions, and that's why we ask you to be specific in your complaint as to how this operation affects you. We would be specific, say if it's parking and they're required to provide off-site parking specifically for a number of vehicles and they aren't, we would address that when we enforce. If they're using excessive bedrooms, we would address that. There is fines for breaking a condition of a temporary use permit, as well as for operating without a temporary use permit. So that answers the next question of how is that handled? And the last part of that question is, are they required to apply for a TUP? They are required to, but if they decide that they want to close the operation and not operate a vacation rental, then of course we're not going to pursue enforcement. We would wait until, we would first of all ask them to remove all of their advertising and monitor the property and wait until the booked vacation rentals are either canceled for that season if they have the time left, or we will allow them to complete that season. Subject to fines, of course, if they break any of our other bylaws. Anyway, I think I've reached my time limit, so I'm open to questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Appreciate that presentation. Probably this section will be one of the busiest as far as questions, so we'll get right to them. And just a reminder, our presenters, Danielle DeVries, Tanya Osborne, Anita Ely is also standing by. She is with both with Interior Health and of course Rosa. So we'll see who's got a hand up, and we will start the questions right away. And I'll ask my technical people here to help out. Shannon, do you see any hands up specifically that I should be looking for? Oh, we're going to stop the presentation so we can see our hands a little better. And there's a comment. Why don't we start with that comment, if you're able to bring that up, and I will I'll reiterate it for the group here. This from Sarah in the chat says, complaint link should be highlighted on the homepage of mynaramata.com. Danielle may want to comment on that, but that would be for My Naramata, who I know the operators of that website are very tuned into the community, for them to share if they would like. Danielle?
Yep, I think Deb Linton's actually on the line, who runs mynaramata.com. So if that's something that the community wants, I believe she is the one who would put it up. So noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. While we're waiting to find out who our next question is coming from, Rosa, very quickly, would bylaw, whether it's yourself or someone else within the enforcement arm, actively monitor sites like Airbnb or vacation rental by owner to see if properties are listed that possibly shouldn't be listed?
we simply don't have the resources to do that. We would love to, but our policy does it does speak to submission of written complaints. With the resources that we have available, we target the vacation rentals that are not operating properly, that are intrusive to the neighborhoods. Maybe in time we will be monitoring the advertisements and stuff, but we can't do it at this time.
Okay, we do have a question I see from, let's go to Richard. Richard Roscoe, who is joining us from Naramata. Richard, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Eric. It's a question for Danielle. Danielle, on your presentation, there was some interesting statistics on vacation rentals. Would it be possible to get that sent out to the CAG members?
Yes, I'll be posting this video as well as the slides on the Regional Connections page, and I'll email you all a follow-up.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like I thought I saw a hand from Skulk. Skulk, would you like to, oh, and then Warren's there as well. Let's go to Skulk and then we'll go to Warren.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Danielle. Danielle, just quickly, one of your slides, I seem to recall, and it flashed too quickly for me. It says any dwelling unit is available for VRBO.
Yes, I know that's one we've discussed offline from this group. The intention of the bylaw is that anything could be applied for if it's a legal dwelling unit on the property, be it a principal dwelling, a secondary suite, or an accessory dwelling. Any of those could be applied for a temporary use permit to get a vacation rental.
Okay, I would like to draw your attention to the current OCP. It says the prohibition in the use of recreational or camping on the property or any use of accessory buildings for vacation rental occupancy.
Yes, so the way that is interpreted internally is that that would be an accessory building that is not a dwelling, like a garage or a workshop or something that's not intended for somebody to live in, that has the plumbing and the electricity and health and safety standards for somebody to live and sleep.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Over the past few weeks, I had a number of correspondences with RDOS personnel, and this is the answer I got. I'm going to request that you save your questions for those meetings, which is the OCP meetings we're busy with, so that we can provide answers in the whole group once and in a consistent manner. I have submitted some of my questions to you as well. So we will not have time. Some of them are legal questions. Some of them are more sort of the housing needs and assessment questions. When do you think we will be able to get to this?
So all of the questions from tonight, we're keeping track of them here. I'll be putting together a document to get it in writing and put it to you as the group, as well as to the public on the Regional Connections page, so that those answers are available.
Well, okay. Do I have to then raise the questions now?
If they're the same that you've written, I have them. If it's anything new, you can raise now.
Well, it is the written one. So what's going to happen to them?
We'll write written responses and send them back to you.
Only to me or to the group?
To the group and to the public on Regional Connections.
So whatever you've received from me, you will give a written response and it'll go back to the CAG.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Scope. We have a few more hands up, so let's get to Warren, who has been waiting patiently. Warren, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question for Rosa there. How many complaints have you been receiving since 2014? How big of an issue is this vacation rentals for the RDOS? I think you're on mute.
Question. Oh,
there we go. Yeah, we've got you now, Rosa. Go ahead.
okay. Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't have those numbers at my fingertips right now. I can get them for you if you really want them. We have received quite a number of complaints, I would say, over the past 8 months. There was one particular complainant that lodged a lot of complaints, I would say about 75. So those were, the vacation rental operators were notified that they needed a temporary use permit, but active enforcement didn't actually take place on all of those simply because the complainant wasn't directly impacted. We give a higher priority with the resources that we currently have on the complaints that impact the neighborhood or the adjacent property owners over multiple ones that are received, like from the same person, just because they want all the vacation rentals to have temporary use permits.
I think it'd be great to know maybe how many vacation rentals there are within Naramata. It sounds like there's around 38, and see if all the complaints are with maybe 2 owners or so. Like it seems like there might be some very problematic owners who have vacation rentals. Maybe it's a few of them within the community that have 90% of the complaints or so.
If we get a complaint, we do investigate it. If the vacation operator or the owners are not operating it properly, we're sure to get a complaint. So we would be made aware of them.
Warren, can I just chirp in here? There are 97, according to the housing needs assessment, there are 97 vacation rentals of the 875 households in Naramata.
Okay.
Okay, thank you both. I'm going to end it there and just quickly go to Stephanie, who's had her hand up for a while. I see Gail Scott has her hand up. Gail will be presenting in just a moment talking about economic development. But Stephanie, before we run out of time on this Q&A session, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, Danielle, if the written response to questions, for example, Skulk has outlined, I think we need to have an opportunity to just discuss that. So maybe we can figure that out as we move forward with the OCP, so that we're not just getting a written response, but we're actually having a time to enter into some discussion about those answers.
Yes, definitely. This is just the start. The written responses will be timely. We will begin meeting in full group again per our calendar in May once these deep dives have gone through, and that's when we'll start these discussions amongst ourselves. I just don't want to overburden the group with too many meetings. There's quite a lot happening.
Okay, thank you all very much for your questions. We're right on time now at 8 o'clock here. We are going to the economic development panel now. Adrienne Federigo will be joining us in a few moments. She is the Area E OCP member, and she is going to talk a bit more about, this time around, childhood development. And then we'll hear from Danielle again. Danielle talking about commercial land use and home occupation. But to get us started, Gail Scott is online now to talk about economic development. She is the economic development coordinator for the RDOS, specifically focusing on Area D. And she is with us now. Go ahead, Gail.
Thank you very much, Eric, and hello to all of you that are attending tonight. I've only been with the RDOS for the past year and a half, and my title is Economic Development Coordinator for RDOS, Okanagan Falls and Area D. What's interesting is the way economic development has been morphing in the last couple of years. As you can tell by my gray hair, I've been in it a long time. 40 years ago, economic development was strictly considered to be something that occurs in the private sector and creates wealth from which many of the community benefits are created. However, because of our lifestyle changes, our significant interest in sustainability from economic, social, and environmental perspective, really the term should be community economic development going forward. This is something that many of the leaders in OK Falls have been pushing for. So I'm just going to try and I don't know if you have a strong understanding of what community economic development is, whether you have a realistic understanding of what economic development is, but community economic development is, it occurs primarily in the public sector. It's a process of making the community a better place to live and creating a quality of life for the people in the community. There's another term for community economic development, which some people use, and it's called local economic development. Basically, exactly the same as community economic development. It's a process where communities identify and initiate their own solutions to economic, social, and environmental issues to build healthy, economical, and viable communities. So in order for, I think looking at OK Falls is a good example. We're a very small community like Naramata is. We do not have, we are unincorporated, but we do have the advantage of having an economic development or community economic development office in that community. And so what that does is allows our community to be more ready for growth development. So for a community to become effectively, I guess I should backtrack. The way I look at it is, it means the community can effectively implement a CED process, and the community must commit to a long-term support for that CED process. It means the municipal council needs to be involved, as well as key community leaders, groups, organizations, institutions. They all must be prepared to invest in community economic development, and that will make a positive change in the community. I don't know if you've been following some of the news that have been happening in Okanagan Falls, but for so long that community has just not changed. It has stayed, I'm going to say, very impoverished. But in the last year and a half, things have absolutely changed for the community. And I truly believe it's because we established, through the support of the regional, or sorry, the through the support of RDOS, to have an economic development function. And because they have that function, they can work one-on-one with community groups, with organizations, with leaders, with the staff at the RDOS, and with the elected officials. And when you have that kind of a collaborative movement, you are able to make change. We're now looking right now, currently, at 4 large developments coming into our area, and this is housing development. That's one of the key issues around the whole of, I'm going to say, Canada. Housing is a serious issue. We don't have enough affordable housing to support new businesses coming into town. We have a situation in which the old warehouses sites being sold off. There's 21 new light industrial park sites available. If we attract those businesses into those sites, that's going to mean families coming in, workers coming in. Where are they going to be housed? So when you look at all of this, housing is a huge component of community economic development, and you have to be a strategic thinker. You have to look far out into the future and how are we going to fix this problem? So you have to remember a few things. It's not a quick fix to any kind of a crisis. Like a lot of people think, well, if a large business closes, then we've got a serious issue. We've got the opposite. We don't even have enough housing to support any new business coming in. Having the short-term rentals is an issue for our area. Yes, we are a resort community, but it still inhibits the opportunity for employees to get long-term safe rental if they require it. The cost of housing is not affordable either anymore. Of those 4 new developments going to be started, like shovels in the ground in the next, I'm going to say 4 to 12 months, I'm not going to say they're truly affordable. At the best case scenario, we might be able to say one of the developers is looking at a 3 to 4 bedroom townhouse type properties with a garage, a couple of bathrooms. And that would be for families, but the others are more for vacation rentals, short term. So it's going to be a very interesting situation as we move forward, because our whole process is to grow Okanagan Falls so that the citizens can have a safe and comfortable community to live in, something that provides economic development for the area, that creates jobs, that creates wealth, and creates a livable income. So no matter what a community is, what gets a community involved in CED, the success depends on many things. The people in the community have to be willing to get involved. Knowledge and skills of the leaders, such as the counselors, the elected directors, the economic development staff at the RDOS, the community volunteers, they all have to be part of leading change. They have to be motivated and effective in creating political leadership and change at that level. Community spirit is so important, and how well the group gets along and works together, that's important. We have a group, a volunteer group called the Okanagan Falls Community Association. It's made up of about 12 to 15 members, all volunteers and all working so hard to bring about change for Okanagan Falls. It can be done in any community. It's just that you have to sit down collaboratively as a group and be able to say, what do we want for our community? What do we want our future to be? What do we want our children to be able to access through the community? Do we want our children to stay in the community after they finish school? Yes, we do. Most people don't want to see all their children flying off to all parts of the world. So community spirit is really important, and they have the group also has to have a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. You have to start thinking outside of the box, and what do you do to create a situation that attracts new investment into the community? And that's the key there. Community economic development is about putting together tools and resources so that you can market and promote your community that attracts investment, new families, new businesses, and grows your community in a very, I like to call a smart growth strategy. So I don't know if I've gone over my time. I think I'm at 8:09 here, Eric, but I could go on for probably a couple of hours, but I won't. I just, if anybody has any questions with regards to understanding more about how a community economic development process works, I'm available at any time. I am working remotely these days, and truly, you're not going to believe this, but it's because of a housing issue. And I ended up having to move away and work remotely. So I am available. I will be back into my office for about 3 weeks in April. I'm also available through all my various contact information, which I can provide. So thank you very much, and welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Gail. We appreciate it. We'll get to our Q&A in just a few moments. We have 2 other presenters. Adrian Federico will join us in just a moment. Danielle DeVries is taking the operations chair here, and she has another presentation for us. Danielle is going to talk about the relationship with economic development with the OCP and zoning bylaws, commercial land use, Naramata Village Center designations, and home occupation and industry, a light topic that should run about 6 minutes. And then a reminder again, we will get to our Q&A at the end. And one other reminder, I was speaking with Danielle earlier, May 12th is another date that you should keep in mind. That one is set for the Community Advisory Group to meet. At this point, still an electronic meeting, but there is a chance it could be an in-person meeting, which in that case might be a hybrid. I think the hybrids are great because you can have that in-person conversation, but also allow people to join electronically, and then it's recorded. And this meeting, from what I understand, will be presented on YouTube shortly. The recording will be posted to YouTube and then posted to the RDOS Regional Connections website, so you can review it, and anyone who missed it can take a look back as well. Now, here's Danielle DeVries.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I talked too long last time. I will keep this one nice and short and sweet. Just wanted to ground us in what is currently happening with commercial land use, home occupation, home industry, and other things that are available in our community here. So there's very little land in Area E that is designated in the OCP and zoned for commercial and other economic development types of uses. So you can see on the right-hand side there, there's a few orangey red properties that are marked CT, that is commercial tourism. And then there's only 2 properties on the bottom right-hand side there marked commercial. That is almost the entirety of commercial lands in electoral area E, with the exception of Paradise Ranch and Chute Lake resorts further up. So there's only 2 commercial parcels there. That is the distillery and the pottery shop. And then, of course, you know, the pub there on the end, and the lodge there. Otherwise, the purple color there is our Naramata Village Center designation and zone, which is the only other land that could have commercial types of development on it as it currently stands in the OCP. So this means all restaurants, tourist accommodations, retail, health services, anything that couldn't be secondary to somebody's home, like a small business that they're running out of their home, has to be on commercially designated land or Naramata Village Center designated land. So there's not much room to grow with what we currently have. There are some exceptions to that. Home occupations, home industries, and bed and breakfasts are permitted in some residential and rural holding designations. These have to be secondary to the principal dwelling, though. So the purpose of the property is that somebody lives there, and then secondary to that, they might be able to have some sort of additional business, like a home office, a studio, or a workshop. There's lots of limits on this, where the maximum size for a home occupation is only 50 meters squared, and for industry is 200 meters squared, so not a lot of room. Again, making sure it's secondary to somebody having it as their home. They could only sell products that they're producing on site, and it can only be run by people who live on site as their primary principal residence. And there's quite a few restrictions in terms of dangerous goods, animals, and cannabis. So not a ton of wiggle room, but there are some forms of business that can happen from home. And there might be an opportunity in this OCP review to change some of the designations within the village to direct more commercial development. It is not determined. It's a mixed topic. That's part of what we're doing the surveys about, to see where the support lies. But we are seeing people who are saying they want to be able to live and work and play in Naramata without having to depend on Penticton. So there could be opportunity to make more land Naramata Village Center or commercial. However, we are also seeing the opposite of people saying, why do we need that in the village when Penticton is so close? And we want to keep our sleepy, calm little village. So that's still in review. And finally, just a clarification that there are restrictions on what is in our commercial and Naramata Village Center designations. The lots are already quite small, which limits the maximum size because you can't build across property lines. So we know the site with the old packing house has quite a lot of room, but that's really it. Everything else is very small parcels, which means you could only have very small commercial buildings. And the maximum height of those is 12 meters in the Naramata Village Center and 10 meters in commercially designated areas, which really gives you a maximum of 3 stories in the village and 2 stories in those 2 commercial properties we have. The last one that I just noted for myself is, I didn't include it in the slides, but we do have a development permit area attached to the Naramata Village Center. So if anyone wants to build anything on one of those Naramata Village Center properties, they must also apply for a development permit. And I did see there was some conversation happening in the chat about that. And that's something we can look at as a group as well. The designations or descriptions there are quite strict in terms of what the building would have to look like and the guidelines it has to meet so that it still fits in the village character. And it's something we can discuss at our later meetings. With that, I will end this and hand it back to Eric so I don't keep us too long. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. That's Danielle DeVries. You all know her. She's a planner with the RDOS, and she is doing a great job in what is probably a very challenging job in this OCP review for Electoral Area E, Naramata. Next up, Naramata resident Adrian Fedrigo. And Adrian is a member of the Community Advisory Group, and she is going to talk to us now about home occupations, commercial growth in rural residential areas, and childhood development. Is that right?
I didn't touch on childhood
development,
but I can if need be.
Go ahead.
Perfect. Hi there again, everyone. I thought I would lead off by mentioning that I do have a master's in community economic development, so business retention, business expansion, how we can grow our community economically is something that is a huge passion of mine and something that I greatly enjoy talking about at length. So our picture on there, I'm not sure if you know our family, and again, our faces are kind of out there, but we do own Chivendo Gelato. We are that mobile little gelato stand you see there that's kind of had a few different locations in the last few years, but we now have hopefully found our spot down at Manitou. So there's us, mobile businesses. Right now, and as Danielle touched upon, there's not a lot of space to open a business. We just don't have the capacity, we don't have the buildings, we don't have the land that's needed down in the village. So I am a huge fan and proponent of mobile businesses. They're awesome for being able to go to where the people are. You're not stuck in a brick and mortar where, you know, people are coming to you, but you get to go to where others are. It's also a great way for when you're starting a business, you're not quite sure how it's going to go, what it's going to look like, or you just want to start small scale without a lot of overhead. So that's one of the reasons that we went with a mobile, is just, again, so we can move around, we can be in different locations, we can go to the people, we just have a little bit more versatility. So awesome resource that we have for mobile businesses is our farmers market. Last summer, it just exploded, and in previous years, it's been such a hot commodity. It's a great community economic development space, and if last year was any indication, I know everyone was kind of needing to get out, but those first few markets blew us away. So the market's not only great as a community asset and a community meeting place, but it's a great spot for those who are wanting to start a business, but again, you're just not sure what the flavor is. And so it's a great spot to test out the waters in the market and just, you know, start small and grow from there. The farmers market, also touching upon, I believe what Gail said with the younger ones, is that they do have a youth table. And we had quite a few youth who had they were selling veggies that they had grown at home. There's some who did some baking. We have others in the community who have skills with like babysitting, fixing bikes, dog walking. Like our youth in our community, they've got some great ideas. And so we want to try and work with them and build some of those entrepreneurial spirits. Please. Bnbs. I did put this up here, and I know that the vacation rental and Danielle touched upon the difference, but Bnbs do offer an opportunity for that additional income and the space for visitors to come. As long as they're done, you know, within the rules and there's someone on site, they can be very viable. as a business resource. So again, an allowable use. And I'm a big proponent that somebody needs to be living on site. Commercial and residence. So although Danielle touched upon real things that they are sort of down in more of a commercial area, I just wanted to highlight how fantastic the building is in terms of that mixed use, right? You can see that there's residential on there, and then there's a small component of the house that was turned into a business. So although not all areas will allow you to have sort of that flashy corner or be able to bring in a commercial type business, it's just a good way to see how your house can be separated into where you can offer different types of businesses. And then looking down, fruit stands, although not a significant, commercial opportunity, they're super fun. I think Discover Naramata last year had on their website the different fruit stands that were in the area. So it's a fun little, hey, come check out the different food options that are available and just help support locally. I know most have probably seen that little cherry stand, although it's tucked away at this time of season, but we have some, again, young entrepreneurial residents who usually man that booth. And then home offices. So we have quite a few, again, different businesses within our community. Lots of, artists, bakers, we have cabinet makers, we have marketing professionals, woodworkers. We have a lot of different people who have their home offices. This is a very prominent one who does a great job on Robinson and super supports our community. And again, it's just that great addition to see that you can have your artist shop connected to your home and welcome guests to come see your amazing talents. As well, we have success in advertising through word of mouth, My Naramata, and our local Facebook group. So we're very fortunate in our community that the supporting local is very strong. I know we moved from Alberta and we had a food truck out there, and we did not feel the love that we felt our first market when we opened here in Naramata. And so we, as a local family, greatly appreciate the support that we get. Next. And so just kind of a friendly sort of reminder here, when you buy from a small business, you're not helping a CEO buy a third holiday home. You're helping a little girl get dance lessons, a little boy get his team jersey, mom and dad put food on the table. And, our family feels that significantly. And I know that a lot of our businesses support our schools, support others in the community, and just do a great job in that regard. I don't have a slide for it because it just kind of hit me as we were chatting. But one kind of unique way that we can look at bringing investment into the community. I love my cooperative, so if anyone talks to me, I'll find a way to make it a cooperative. But one cooperative that I learned about is called an investment cooperative, and essentially it would be those in the community who would put some money into a pot and then would be able to support locals. So if we had a family who wanted to start a business, didn't have the capital, essentially they could go to this investment cooperative to find some capital funding. And through there, that family, that business owner would be supported by the knowledge of others within that cooperative. And then the business then would be repaying their funding that was given. So that's where that regenerative income would come into for the investors. So there are some unique ideas out there that we could look at that would help keep some funding within our community, but also help to invest in new businesses and new ideas. And yeah, that's kind of it for me.
Great, thank you very much, Adrian. We appreciate your presentation. We have just about 5 minutes left in this presentation. We will go to our Q&A in just a moment. I don't want to run out of time for this one, so I want to quickly thank everyone who has been involved in this meeting. First of all, from all of the community advisory group members to our presenters as well. We really want to thank all of them for their participation in this meeting. We had Anton Wolf, Tanya Osborne, Anita Ely, Stephanie McLeish, of course, Adrian Fedrigo, Rosa Aylwin and Gail Scott. Shannon and Danielle here from RDOS Planning have been instrumental in making this technically work as well. And a couple of very quick reminders coming up March 29th. There will be another meeting. That's this coming Tuesday. An information release will be going out tomorrow. So that's Tuesday, March 29th between 6 and 8 p.m. The RDOS has launched the second of 3 surveys for Electoral Area E. They launched that on February 15th. It closed on the 13th of March. And that survey is intended to help create a community vision by comparing stylized scenarios for the future of Naramata. And that will be the discussion at the next meeting on March 29th. And you can review some of the comments by going to RDOS Regional Connections. Do we have any questions for this portion? Let's take a look here. It looks like we have a hand up from Richard. Richard, go ahead, please. Just a reminder, if you are going to ask a question, to unmute yourself if you can, please. You're still muted, Richard. There we go. Looks like we've got Richard.
Hello.
Richard. Hi there.
Hi there. Thank you, Eric. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the presenters and organizers tonight for this great meeting. I have a question for Gail Scott. Gail, I'm hoping I misunderstood what you said, but something you said kind of alarmed me. It said you guys down in OK Falls, you've got 4 projects ready to go, shovels in the ground in the very near future. But the vast majority of them are going to be for vacation rentals. Is that correct?
I probably should have been careful how I said that. The vast majority of them are condos in 3-4 stories. They are appropriately located to the lake. The thought is they will likely be purchased as second or third homes, probably holiday homes for those that have that kind of money. However, a portion of them, of course, will be obviously purchased for long-term family use. But it is an expectation that well, I can't tell you what the percentage would be, but we expect many of the units will end up becoming short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you, Gail. I really appreciate that clarification. That is a cautionary note for us here in Naramata. I think what we would like to do when it comes to affordable housing is to get young families, young people in and so forth, rather than people buying it as an investment property.
Yes, I agree, Richard. I mean, this is a concern for me because we desperately need those family homes. We happen to have available land in which we can attract, businesses. But you can't bring those businesses in if you don't have the housing to support that.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off there if you don't mind. We just have a minute or so left. And I see Nicole has her hand up. So Nicole will be our final question for this portion, and then we will wrap up our meeting with a couple of quick reminders. Nicole, go ahead, please. Just a reminder to unmute yourself, please.
Oh, I'm not. Okay.
Hi there, we can hear you. Oh, we did. There we go.
Okay. Basically, I think there is a lot more communication happening if we can see each other instead of just over the computer, because there's not enough interaction between the people. It's only the same people that speak. The rest of people just listen, but we don't have any enough feedback. So when are we going to have person-to-person meeting?
I wasn't able to hear you very well. I think you were asking about in-person meetings. Is that right?
Yeah, in person.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. So the next in-person meeting at this point hasn't been planned. And I should mention as well, due to what's going on with COVID, all of these in-person meetings have been thrown off. And right now, there is no clear indication that it is safe to have another in-person meeting. Although the mask mandates have changed, It seems like it's an evolving situation, but certainly there is a desire to have an in-person meeting. So is a date set for any in-person meeting at this point?
I haven't booked anything yet at the fire hall, but my hope is that our 2 meetings that are planned in May can be back to the in-person hybrid that we had at the fire hall, and hopefully with better technology, because we have a new tool for speaker and video that we didn't have last time.
Okay, so again, we should wrap it up to keep on time. We do really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here for this meeting. It's a lot of time out of your personal family time, but of course for very important reasons to look at what the OCP, the official community plan, looks like going forward for Electoral Area E, Naramata. I'd like to thank everyone again, including Electoral Area D Director Carla Kozakovich for joining us. This broadcast will be on YouTube, and that will be available through the RDOS Regional Connections website. Many of the questions that were brought up tonight, as many as you can gather, if hopefully we didn't miss anything, will also be part of that as well on RDOS Regional Connections. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Have a great night, and we will see you again soon here in this virtual world, and maybe